Hey everyone, welcome to TYHub Let's Talk podcast. Today we're with the helicopter pilots in the Irish Air Corps. We're recording in the Flying Training School and we're joined by Captain Neil Dunn and Lieutenant Cayman Rowe. Welcome and thank you for joining
Hi, Fiona.
today. Joining me today for talk about your careers as helicopter pilots. Start with yourself, Captain Dunn. Where inspired you, or what inspired you to join the Air Corps?
Yeah, so I suppose I had a very strong family connection with the military. My uncle served in the Air Corps, so he kind of inspired me from a very young age. As I said, with my granddad being in the army and all that type of stuff as well, definitely influenced me to make that decision to join the Air Corps as a career.
And yourself?
Yeah, so I always had kind of an interest in aviation, but the commercial route wasn't really for me ever. And I was in college at the time doing a degree when I kind of found out about the Air Corps and the possibilities there. So um, next thing I know, I applied and it was accepted. So yeah, it all just stemmed from kind of an early love for aviation, and it stemmed from there. Yeah.
So when you say you've always had a love for aviation, was that when you were
Pretty much,
little
yeah,
lad?
as long as I can remember anyway. And I explored kind of going down the route of getting a PPL and maybe trying to skip into the commercial scene. But there was a couple of reasons. I suppose that the main one was it wasn't affordable either. And I kind of wanted something maybe a bit more challenging, a bit more varied, kind of with a day-to-day life. So the military seemed like the way to go, yeah.
Okay, so you had to go to the cadetship.
Yes.
When did you join the cadetship at first?
So I first actually applied for the cadetship when I finished up secondary school back in 2006. I'm showing my age now. So I applied for the cadetship, didn't get it coming out of secondary school. So I always had a plan B, which was going to college and doing an aviation related course in college. So after a 3-year degree, I then applied for the Air Corps, and I kind of used the first round of the cadetship interviews as a learning platform to basically then go towards college, and for the next round of the cadet interviews 3 years later or 4 years later, and I was successful then. So I started my cadetship in 2010. I had a 2-year cadetship, everything from the military side of the cadetship being down in the Curragh, down in the DFTC, the Defence Forces Training Centre, and then I started my flying training and got commissioned in December 2012.
Okay, and yourself?
Yeah, so I did a level 8 degree. It was a 4-year degree, and I finished that in 2017. And I applied then for the Air Corps immediately after that, and I was accepted then. And I started the cadetship kind of towards the end of 2017. Yeah, so the
So you
timeline.
both went to college first before joining the Air Corps.
Yeah, so it's a little.
You did it as a backup plan, but sorry, that sounds really terrible saying.
No.
The college was a backup plan to the Air Corps, but it was your intermediate to keep you going with the aviation and kind of brush up on a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. Now the thing about the cadetship at the time, and it still is that because it was a level 7, I was still considered a school leaver,
Okay.
unlike Cayman, who had a level 8 degree coming out. So there is a difference once you get commissioned. I was a second lieutenant, where Cayman would have been promoted straight to lieutenant. So there is a difference when people join, whether you're a school leaver or a level 7 graduate, in comparison to a level 8 graduate coming into the Air Corps. But no, it definitely wasn't like a plan B, I think, even though I said it. It was definitely a case of knowing that I definitely wanted to go into the Air Corps, and what better way to prepare myself to learn about aircraft, aerodynamics, the math side of flying, and all that type of stuff, than doing an aviation related course through college.
Okay. And what degree did you do?
It was a degree in multimedia systems and web engineering, so kind of IT related. And in my own head, I kind of said it'd be nice to have the degree, get the degree finished. So it's just an extra, I suppose, a tool in the bag later in life. If I ever wanted to revisit that side of things, I could. But I suppose the main goal was always to try and explore a career in aviation. So a slightly more varied, different sides of the house, but happy the way it worked out. Yeah.
And when you were in school, did you when you were going through career guidance and that kind of thing, did you have anybody come in and chat to you about careers in the Air Corps or in Irish Defence Forces? You've had a relation, so you always had that in the background. But
Yeah.
having that coming into school, did you have anybody to kind of speak to about it?
Not so much actually. I suppose I got most of my information from kind of social media sources, the online, the website, and yeah. So I didn't know anyone in the Air Corps, and we weren't kind of fortunate enough to have members come out to the school for kind of PR visits and things like that. So my information was solely reliant on kind of online sources, which there was plenty of, and we continue this day to kind of release as much information as we can in that regard. So yeah.
Okay, what is your typical day? Because you're both helicopter pilots. Do you both have different aircrafts? Do you have different roles within the Air Corps? What do you do every day?
Yeah,
Any
so
day?
I suppose it all comes down to where you are and what rank you're at. So obviously I'm that little bit more senior to Cayman rank wise. So I'm actually appointed down, even though I'm a helicopter pilot, I've been appointed down to Air Corps headquarters as the PR and press officer for the Air Corps. So having Cayman with the skill set of social media and online platforms and that type of skill set, it's great that I can lean on someone with that expertise. So even though I might be the senior person, I still rely on Cayman for a lot of things, which is probably one of the beauties of being in the Air Corps, is that you've that type of variety of skill sets that people can kind of plug into every now and again. So at the moment, as I said, I'm down in headquarters. I fly the AW139. It's the aircraft that you've maybe primarily seen on, say, for the likes of any sort of formation flying. We have a very famous photo of an aircraft flying the flag over Crow Park. That was the AW139. And last year, when we had that successful mission off the southeast coast, that was an AW139 that was used for the insertion onto that platform, that ship that we boarded. So that's what I do at the moment. As I said, as the PR officer, I'm the main, or my office is the main link between say an internal audience and an external audience, the community that we serve. So anytime a press release needs to be done, anytime a news query comes in, that kind of gets filtered through my office, and we have to come up with timely reports, we have to come up with timely news, newsworthy pieces or segments, and that has everything to do from, say, print media all the way up to being on the RT61 News.
Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit different than when you started off.
Yeah, completely.
It's actually quite funny because that's what your base would be in college with your college, but you had aviation, you're flying, and he's doing press. So it's kind of funny. Every day is something different. Every year is something. You do different jobs within it, and you're working with a team, and that is very much the core of the Irish Air Corps, isn't it? That
Yeah, exactly.
You
And
can
like that,
do different careers within it.
like give it another year or two, and I can guarantee you Cayman is going to be the person that's going to be in my shoes at the moment, because I think the best thing is that we identify where those skill sets are, and people get appointed into those because of the relevant qualifications. So just because you come in either as a school leader or a graduate, there is ample opportunity to upskill, whether it's from a flying point of view or an external education. So like that, in the last couple of years, I've actually upskilled in PR and marketing communications. I've got a master's. I upskilled to a level 8 within the first 2 years of becoming a commissioned officer. So there's all those opportunities for people when they join. It's not just a case of you walk in the door and you're a pilot.
And that's your job set forever.
Yeah, exactly. It's not that whatsoever. So I think that's or potentially a misconception, that people think that once they join as a technician or an advanced paramedic or an EMT or as I said, a fixed wing pilot or a rotary wing pilot, that's only what they're going to be doing. It couldn't be further from the truth. You've such a broad range of experiences and opportunities within the Air Corps. It's fantastic.
And when you started in the cadetship, you did the same as the fixed wing pilots, and then you both went into helicopters. Is that, I need to say, well, I'm going to ask the question, is that your preference that you landed there in the helicopter section, or because you got to try out both. So you
Yes.
got to do fixed wing and helicopter.
So everyone starts on the PC9 as a cadet, and then once you get commissioned, for me, I had the opportunity of flying the Cessnas, doing cash escorts around the country for about a year and a half, and then I made the decision to move into the helicopter unit, where I think it might be Cayman, and I'll let Cayman answer how he kind of ended up being a helicopter pilot.
Yeah, so I started off the same in that when I started flying with the ground school to begin with here, all the theory side of it, and then rather than move on to the PC9, my class was kind of lucky enough, I suppose, to get sent to the States to train over there on contract with the US Air Force. So we flew Grob 120 TP aircraft type over there for 7 months, and that was our initial basic flying training course where we learned to fly from, I suppose, zero to hero, for lack of a better word. And upon completion of that, we came back here to the flying training school, and we had a number of sorties on the PC9 then, just to kind of get more familiar with the way things are done over here, because there are differences between the States and how we do it here, and kind of get a feel for Irish airspace as well. So after just a couple of flights on the PC9, then we were given our pilot's wings, and then we started on the helicopter training then at that point. Yeah. So a slightly different route to Neil, but ended up similar places.
So similar.
Yeah.
But that's it, isn't it? Like within the Air Corps, you can start off as a tech and end up as a pilot, or the GOC of the Air Corps.
Yeah.
Or you can come in as with all full intentions that you're going to be a fixed wing pilot, but end up flying a helicopter, and that's and then working in the press office. So, but you get to go everywhere. So you did training in America.
Yep.
With the American Air Force. Did you get to go abroad to do any training
No,
abroad?
as I said, we were lucky enough that we got to do everything in house. So when myself and my two classmates were cadets here, we had a full complement of instructors, and we were flying twice a day, like solidly for I think approximately 9 months. So like that, it literally depends on, I suppose, the needs of the organisation at the time and what resources that they have, and that's why, as I said, Cayman ended up going over to the States to complete his training. We actually currently have some helicopter pilots that are over in the UK learning how to fly helicopters with the RAF. So this is kind of common practice where there's an exchange of knowledge and interoperability with other air forces. That's
almost like an exchange student.
Yeah, pretty much.
For a little bit. What was there anything in particular in the States that you would love to see here, or that you kind of missed from here that you would have had for the 7 months over there?
The weather over there was perfect. We were in South Alabama.
Okay, besides the weather, we can't control that one.
I think we saw about 2 clouds the entire trip over there. No, to be honest with you, there's not. I can't really think of anything that's specific over there that I'd love to have here. The aircraft was great. It was very similar to the PC9, probably a bit less powerful and a bit smaller, but ultimately it's a fixed wing aircraft, and I'm happy with my choice to be a helicopter pilot. So no, there's nothing major that I kind of wish was over there that we had here.
I've heard from private pilots that have flown in America. Where was it in the States that
It was South Alabama.
the air is different? For say like down in Las Vegas, where they had the World Championships there recently, the pilots that came over from Europe noticed that there's a whole different level in air. So like it's drier, here it's damper. So does that affect how you learned how to fly? Does it affect your daily flying as well then?
Well, I think a big thing that I suppose we don't have to contend with is altitude being an issue, limiting performance, or heat limiting the performance of aircraft. So when you're, I suppose, at altitude and in hot, very warm conditions, it makes, as I said, the performance of the aircraft not perform as good. So there is a bit of a payoff that, yet the engines and the aircraft operate at optimum condition here in Ireland, but we have to contend with the bad weather at times.
We've trained helicopter pilots from other countries here as well because of the weather conditions and being around on an island. Is that
Yeah, not necessarily trained them directly, but we have had relationships with the likes of the RAF that have come over, and for the likes of the US Air Force, who have now actually got the AW139 as part of their fleet. There has been an exchange of knowledge and experiences with those air forces, and we've sent teams over there as well to, I suppose, reciprocate that exchange of knowledge or transfer of knowledge.
transfer knowledge, exchange of knowledge
Mm.
that the CIA don't know about? um, have you flown outside of the Air Corps?
So, well,
I'll go first. Well, for
yeah.
me, no. I suppose yes, I flew in the States, but that was under. I was still part of the Air Corps for all of that. I was an Air Corps pilot still. So, aside from that, no, I never went down the route of getting, say, a PPL outside. So all my flying experience, including
Is
all the training, is just
within here.
being Air Corps. Yeah.
And I had approximately 5 hours of flying over in Weston with the flying trains
Okay.
with the school over there, and that was basically when I was in college. I genuinely wanted to see, would I fancy this as a career? And yeah, as I said, the second I had that first flight, I was hooked.
You're sold.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's no point me even asking like what is the most memorable moment really for flying, because I can see in both your expressions that like flying is it. You light up with just the whole idea of being up in the sky and flying. Helicopters have their own advantages and disadvantages when it comes to flying in areas, and missions would differ than the fixed wing pilot. So what type of missions would you have done? Would you go as far as the UK in the actual helicopter, or is it purely around Ireland that you would be based, and missions would be?
Yeah, well, for me, obviously just having a little bit more experience than Cayman, the majority of my flying has been on island. I've had the opportunity of going to the likes of the UK, to air shows, or even into London. They've kind of been as far as I've flown, but the variety of flying in Ireland and on island has been fantastic. So everything from operating with the special forces, the ARW, Army Ranger Wing, all the way up to doing our air ambulance based out of Athlone, so EAS, the Emergency Aeromedical Service. On that, and on a busy day, you could be flying, from 5 minutes of logging on, all the way up to end of VF4 when you stand down the service. So they're long days. They're landing into everything from GA fields to farmers' back fields, into big gardens, picking up patients and bringing them to a variety of hospitals that are dotted around the country, depending on the nature of the incident.
And have you ever had to fly to a location where it's really small and complicated to fly to? Like how big of a space do you need to land your helicopter?
Quite small actually. So quite often we'd practice, especially with the 135. Well, and the 139, but the 135 is more kind of what I have the experience on. So we'd kind of more often than not we'd go out to the hills, the Wicklow Mountains, and kind of practice approaches into the likes of turning circles and forests, and maybe some campgrounds once there's no one there, of course. Kind of small Y junctions in roads, basically areas where there could be a lot of trees around, and that's mainly to kind of build up our own skill set. We also fly with an aircrew in the back of the aircraft, and they play a really, really important role when we're flying in that kind of in those locations. They're constantly keeping an eye out underneath the aircraft, out the sides of the aircraft. They can look out the back, whereas our visibility wouldn't let us look out the back. So we rely heavily on aircrew going into locations like that as well. But yeah, very tight spaces, enough where you can see the trees coming up around you. You just have to be very careful not to cause any damage. But again, that's what the aircrew are there for. They're very good at their job, and we work very well together in the cockpit. So.
And in a helicopter, how many pilots, captains are there, and rear crew on a typical flight?
Yeah, so there's one or two slight differences between the AW139 crew and the EC135 crew, what Cayman flies. The commonality is that we all fly with a crewman in the back, and this makes sure that we can get into those types of tight situations or tight landing spots. Risk-free, basically. Yes, there is a certain element of risk when we fly into those types of areas, but we rely on the crew, we rely on the training that we give them, and there's a reason why, guys who have come from the EC135, such as Cayman, they've learned all that going into the Wicklow Mountains, is that when they transition over onto the larger helicopter, they have that experience coming with us. So the AW139 has a captain, co-pilot, and then a rear crew. And then, as I said, I'll let Cayman talk about the 135.
So for the 135, our minimum crew in the aircraft is one pilot, and that's it. But if we're landing off-site or off airfield, we'll always bring someone in the rear, so an air crew in the back of the aircraft, just to guide us into that location, just for the increased risk and hazards of trees and birds and all the other things that come along with it. So yeah, that's our minimum crew would be, for the likes of confined areas, one pilot and one air crew in the back.
That's some difference between the two aircrafts.
Yeah.
Well, are both aircraft fitted with seats, or are they removable? Like what? Because you do air ambulance as well with the helicopter.
Yeah. So the 139 has obviously a captain seat, co-pilot seat. That's always going to be there. And then because of the platform, it can be changed at a moment's notice. So you could have everything from troop transport, like a troop transport setup, all the way to neonatal equipment being put on board, and then the standard EAS configuration, which is seats to the front and rear, with a stretcher in the middle. And then the rear cabin will basically have all the medical equipment.
And would most hospitals in Ireland have helicopter platforms for the helicopters to land
the
on?
majority of them have it. Depending on the call that we would go to, that kind of dictates where we're going to go. So depending on whether it's a crush injury, head trauma, any sort of issue with the heart, that will dictate what hospital we go to. I suppose one of the luxuries of being in that crew is that you rely heavily on the advanced paramedic and the Air Corps EMT or rear crew operator making that call for you. So that's why we don't really have a huge amount of medical training. The pilots, it's because there has to be a clear delineation between the decision-making process. We let them make the decision of where we're going, and then we'll make sure that we get there safely, efficiently, and in the most appropriate manner.
In an emergency, you wouldn't have an awful lot of time to plan your flight, but planning is key to everything. If you don't plan and prepare, you're preparing to fail, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how fast can you react to and respond to an emergency?
I'll let you answer that, Cayman.
Yeah. I suppose I'd have limited experience in that regard, but I know from, if we're out and we're already flying and say a tasking might come in, it's quite a simple, I suppose, decision-making process. You're looking, okay, where do we need to go to? So you get the distance to that location, and you work out how much fuel you need. You're checking out the weather in that location. Is it safe to go there? Do we have the fuel to get there and come back? And if those questions are kind of answered, then that's the decision made for you. So it all comes down to kind of the hard facts. Do we have fuel? Is the weather good? And do we have the time? So
I suppose the other factor is that up until you become fully rated, anytime you go out training with, say, the likes of an instructor or an examiner, they put you through the ringer, basically. So you could be flying and they can simulate an engine fire, they can simulate an engine failure, screen failures, and those types of situations, and kind of put you under a bit of pressure to see how you react. So when you do, I suppose, get into a situation where you might be under a little bit of stress or pressure, you actually start reverting to the training that you've been put through. Could be weeks, months, years in advance, but because of that level of training and the as I said, the emergencies that you're put through, you would tend to be always prepared for something. It mightn't be exactly textbook, but at least you can respond in an appropriate manner. We do, all crews or all pilots do go through sim training as well, if twice a year, approximately 6 months apart. Once again, there are certain failures and emergencies that we can simulate, in the real aircraft, and that's why we do that in sim or on simulator training. So once again, it's basically one of those cases where the instructor gets to throw the kitchen sink at you, and see how you react. And then there's briefs, pre-briefs, and seeing how you could maybe overcome that situation or deal with a certain situation better. And that's what we do, and that's common throughout the Air Corps with the crews.
And if you were able to plan, so your kind of standard missions, then you have quite a bit of time to plan that ahead of time. You're looking over a flight plan, you're going through the weather system, you're doing all the tick the boxes as you're going along. Talk me through how a typical plan for a typical mission would go, like from how many days in advance would a mission
Yeah, well,
be given and that kind of
there's
thing?
a couple of differences, I suppose, depending on crews, depending on what service you're providing. So the Air Corps provide pilots for the Garda Air Support Unit, and that's a 3-minute response time. So that's everything from getting the call in from the guards. We work with on Garda Síochána. That's everything from receiving the call from a dispatch, the guards making the call that we're actually going to go, and then they'll ask the pilot, can we go to a certain location? At that stage, the pilot excuse me, will make sure that the weather is serviceable, it's above limits, make sure that the aircraft is prepped, primed and ready to go, and literally they walk straight out to the aircraft. They grab their helmets and they walk straight out to the aircraft after filing with air traffic control. So with something like that, it's very much off the cuff. You don't know where you're going, and that's why you need a certain amount of hours experience, a certain amount of experience and training to fly for the guards. And then in comparison, if you were, say, on the likes of air ambulance, it's pretty similar, where you don't know where you're going, but you make sure that the weather, you're constantly briefing the weather, you're making sure that the aircraft is primed, it's ready to go, there's enough fuel in it, everyone is fed and watered when they can, and then when a call comes in, it's not a 3-minute response time, but I think it's in around 5-6 minutes. Obviously larger aircraft, a bit more time consuming to get started, but they could be airborne within a matter of minutes as well. So for us helicopter pilots, a little bit different, depending on the mission. It's a lot more time focused from a response, whereas our, say, fixed wing counterparts, a lot of those flights that come in or missions that come in could be a couple of days or a couple of weeks in advance, so they can start getting a certain paperwork.
Has there ever been a time where you haven't been able to go out and respond because of the weather?
Yeah. It, like, at the end of the day, we have an air regulations manual. It's common. So the Air Corps has air regulation manuals for different units and different squadrons. There's different weather limitations for the type of operation that you're flying in. And because it's so, it nearly takes the guesswork out of it, or any sort of second guessing, is that if it's in black and white that the weather is above a certain or below a certain limit that's stated in one of these manuals, you just can't fly. That's obviously from a safety point of view, but because of the operation, which is helicopter flying, whether it's EAS or the Garda Air Support Unit or flying into the mountains, it's laid down in black and white, so we don't have to have that, I suppose, that guessing game. So that's why, I suppose, Cayman and the younger or less experienced guys, when they're kind of going through, it's so important to keep to those rules and regs.
Do you still do like security for cash travel, like when they're bringing the big money out of the mint and that kind of thing? Do you still have air support for that, and do you fly really low for that kind of escort?
Not necessarily. So obviously, just due to operational reasons, we would be involved in those types of missions, but we wouldn't really be commenting on the mission profile, Fiona, okay?
And how low can you fly?
So
well, I suppose we're bound by the same rules as civil aviation, and that's something people kind of need to remember. So I suppose over non-built-up areas, 500 feet for ourselves anyway, and over built-up areas 1,000 feet. Now, obviously, when we go out to more rural areas and we practice approaches into forests and things like that, we obviously have to bring the height down because we're coming into land. But yeah, we do have to follow the same rules and regulations as governed by the Irish Aviation Authority and the EASA. So, we do adhere to them.
And how high can a helicopter fly?
Can a helicopter fly? Well,
can your helicopter fly?
I know. I can speak for the 135. The service ceiling is 20,000 feet if you have oxygen, but we don't carry oxygen in our aircraft, so we're limited to 10,000 feet in the 135. And
And that's similar with the AW139. Anything above 10,000 feet, hypoxia can become an issue, so that's why we don't fly above that.
It's amazing to understand what way it works when you go through the cadetship. You become a helicopter pilot. The types of missions that you would perform on an almost regular basis compared to someone flying an airplane. Which one do you prefer, airplane or helicopter? Sticking with helicopter? Final answer?
I'd be I'd never be let get away with it if I said airplane, but no, 100% helicopter.
Yeah,
all the way,
definitely
yeah.
from the variety of type of flying that you can do. I remember before I came into the press office, I was flying, or in a very short period of time, you could have been flying everything from an air ambulance to sniping with the Army Ranger Wing down in the Glen, all the way up to parachuting as well in a 2 week period. So the variety of flying, I think that us heli pilots get might be a little bit broader than our fixed wing counterparts.
Do the helicopter pilots do the missions go abroad to with the Rangers and the Army?
No, so we wouldn't deploy an aircraft, but for the other sort of UN missions, Air Corps pilots, crew, everyone, they have served and that they are afforded the opportunity to serve. I unfortunately haven't been able to serve overseas, and I don't think Cayman has either, but that's the nature of the beast. And it's just one of those things.
But our aircraft stay here.
Yeah.
So when you go to do a mission abroad, it would be a UN.
Oh no,
aircraft,
so there has
would it
been
be?
times where we have basically deployed an aircraft to a foreign country for the likes of humanitarian relief or Irish personnel extraction out of countries. So that is something that the Air Corps has done, and especially with the new acquisition of the 295s, the C295s, that could become a more regular occurrence, especially further afield, seeing as it has a greater, I suppose, endurance and nautical mile extension that we can get to.
Because there is a limit of fuel capacity of how far you can fly as well. You mentioned fuel capacity for the helicopters. I know it's a lot more for the larger aircrafts like the CAS and that. But what is the fuel capacity for your helicopter? So you have a 135. You've flown a 139.
Yeah.
So yours is smaller, slightly.
Yeah, so we can carry just over half a ton, about 540 kilos of fuel, which lets us fly for just over 2 hours. So I'm not sure about the 139.
Yeah, I think we're just over 1,200 kilos of fuel. And once again, depending on the aircraft and configuration, you might actually have to reduce that from centre of gravity limitations and whatnot. So once again, that can give us, put it this way, I think the best example is to say that when we're on the likes of an air ambulance mission, we could take off from Athlone, and with the several airports dotted around the country, we can land in, refuel and be gone again. We can land into other army barracks that would have a refueling station. We can refuel up there and then we can come back to Athlone. So there has been days where you get up in the morning, you have your breakfast, you brief, and you get a call within the first 15 minutes and you don't get back for another 12 hours.
Wow,
so yeah,
okay.
it's great. Yeah.
When you say you have to refuel, can you refuel at a commercial airport, or does it have to be like a?
No, we can refuel. Yeah, we can refuel anywhere.
Okay.
So basically, as long I do know in one of our barracks is on the west coast, that has a refueling station. Obviously, Athlone does as well, and then obviously back in Baldonnel here. So depending on where you are, you're pretty much you're always close to a refueling station, and I said, because of the relationship that we have with different airfields and airports, we can land in, refuel and be gone again in pretty quick time.
So that covered one last question that I had actually from a student. So that you can pretty much refuel anywhere. As a helicopter, it's usually within Ireland.
Yeah.
Do you know, like, I'll go with the question from our student, is there any airspace in Europe that is actually restricted to Irish Air Corps that they're not allowed to fly in?
I suppose there's restricted airspace everywhere,
Yeah.
including Ireland. That and the rules apply to us just as much as anyone else. That we don't fly into it unless we have permission to do so. So you'll find restricted airspace for various reasons. It could be a particular country's military operations. There could be something like a prison, for example, or it could be any sort of reason that there be restricted airspace. We have it in Ireland, it's in the UK, it's all over Europe. So yeah, we just have to be aware of it. If we need to fly into the airspace, we'll always seek permission to do so beforehand, and just be careful that way.
And you'd know as well from your flight planning where these restricted areas are. Is there, like when you're on land, there's landmarks. So when you're up in the sky, is there like any kind of landmark to give to you that you're saying that you're entering into that space or don't go near it?
Well, with the advances in technology, I suppose, on the aircraft, both fixed wing and rotary, all of the mapping or all of the moving maps can be shown on the screen in the cockpit in real time. So you also have the opportunity to talk to air traffic control as well, and they can relay messages whether you are getting close to, say, a restricted area. They can let you know exactly whether you have permission to enter or not. But we primarily use our maps and back it up with a physical map as well in the cockpit, and that's a way of keeping our situational.
Old-fashioned map, like a paper map.
Yeah. So that's a way of keeping our
situational
awareness pretty much at the highest level.
Fantastic. It's so funny, like, you know, it's trying to explain to teenagers now about cassette tapes and CDs even. What were they back in the day? But like actual physical maps. So you learn that through your cadetship and your military training as well, how to read a map.
Yeah, so and like that, you know, even in helicopters now, we use an EFB, an electronic flight bag. So in the past, and when I would have started my flying, we would have used, say, the likes of, for the likes of our instrument flying, we used to use paper copies. And you had a book, and you had to flick through a page and fly that approach. Whereas now you basically just go onto your iPad, you go into the software that's provided.
Does every pilot have an iPad?
Not every pilot, but every aircraft would have an associated electronic flight bag associated with.
So you have your equipment within the aircraft, you have your iPad, you have your old-fashioned map, because God forbid the battery runs out on the iPad. You've always got a backup and a secondary plan. The air traffic control is really, really important to all aircraft and everyone flying. The one for the Air Corps, how far of a range do you stay in contact with them? Like, if you're flying to Athlone, let's say, you're not still talking to somebody in Baldonnel, are you?
It kind of depends on what service is being provided, but when we take off out of Baldonnel, we would usually be handed over to Dublin. That would give us, say, the majority of Leinster. So we'd be talking to Dublin, learning about traffic in that area. And then when we're kind of in around the Tullamore area, we get transferred over to Shannon, air traffic control. And they would basically provide then the service. If you can imagine a north-south line running through Tullamore, that's kind of when we start talking to Shannon.
Right, okay. So you actually still communicate with commercial air traffic control, not just the Defence Forces air traffic control.
No,
frequency as those services as well. Yeah, so we can hear their traffic, they can hear our calls as well.
So you're not flying blind, and they know that you're there.
Exactly.
We'll leave it on there at that note. That is absolutely fantastic. Thanks so much for giving us an insight into what it's like to be a helicopter pilot for the Irish Air Corps. So thank you, Captain Neil Dunn and Captain wrong one, Lieutenant Cayman Rowe, for joining us on TYHub Let's Talk podcast. Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to doing lots more interviews about careers in the Irish Air Corps.